All right, so we've got the Creative Cloud and different ways that you can actually go on them. So you go to like creativity and design, and then you go to Photoshop, and it's going to tell you all about how awesome it is. I know, look at them working on the iPad. That's fun. So you can get the free trial, even if you just want to hang out for a little while and just see what it does, and that's totally fine there. Otherwise, we're going to buy now. And what you end up doing is you create an Adobe account and you log in, and then you put your information in there, and you can say, okay, this is what I want to have. My question is whether or not they've changed up the plans recently because they've introduced the new Photoshop. Like I was saying before, just a couple days ago, literally is when they changed it. So there are different plans that include different softwares. Why this isn't working, I don't know. Maybe it's because I already have it. And they're just like, hey, Sarah, you already have this. So let me do this. No one will know. It's too super top secret. And then if I go, or there might just be so many people trying to buy it. There it is. Cool. All right. So this will pop up. Do you want stock images? No. That's okay. There's other places to get stock images. I'll tell you about that. It's a lot easier. Oh, fantastic. So yes, so they put them together. Brilliant. Okay. So photography plan for $10 a month. It's going to come with other software like Lightroom, but the one thing that you're, of course, going to want in there is the Photoshop, absolutely. Otherwise, Photoshop just outright, for whatever bizarre reason, is $21 a month. I don't know. I don't know why they do that, where it's like they want you to kind of package things in together. But this is the one that's just like the regular old photography plan at $10 a month. And that's going to have it on there. And don't get me wrong, although everything is through the cloud, you don't have to have internet access to be able to work with your pictures. So the software is actually downloaded on your computer. It's actually still physically on your computer. But to be able to continue using it and get updates and all that good stuff, it just at certain points needs to be connected to the internet to say, oh yeah, okay, you have your subscription and that you're up to date on your latest version and all that good stuff. So I can still take my laptop, be offline, and work with my images. So don't feel like you have to be connected or have a fast internet connection to work with them. Not at all. The other thing that it's going to come with is like 20 gigs of cloud storage. So if you do want to have that, you have 20 gigs up in the Adobe Cloud to be able to put your images up onto. So say if you're working with the Photoshop on your computer, but you decide, I'm going to go to the coffee shop and I want to take my iPad, you can actually, instead of having to plug something in, you can have your iPad with you and just download it from the cloud. So you have this kind of like more connected access with everything. Otherwise, if everything's kind of in one central location, not a big deal. But I feel like when it comes to using on the iPad, this might be a slightly bigger deal because you're not going to be able to have like a hard drive plugged in or something like that. So, and not be able to, excuse me, download files quite as easily. I still have to work out some of the kinks on that, but otherwise, you can upgrade to a whole terabyte of storage. Probably not going to need it if you just use this 20 gigs pretty sparingly and just circulate the pictures in and out of it, then you're going to be just fine. Otherwise, it's like $20 a month for the extra terabyte of storage, and then you can just put whatever you want on there. There's Lightroom on there as well. If we have time at the end, I'm more than happy to get into Lightroom. Absolutely. It's a really amazing software to be able to organize your images and sort of batch edit them. So I really enjoy that. If we have time at the end, love to go over that. I'm in love with Lightroom. Yeah.
What's the difference between...
Oh, yeah, duh. Oh, my God, thank you. So, oh, and that's the other thing. Please ask questions. Please. That's why you drove all the way out here through ridiculous Atlanta traffic instead of sitting at home watching a YouTube video. Please ask questions. So the difference between the two. Lightroom is, if I open up my catalog real quick, y'all can kind of see. Lightroom is more of like a organizing space for your pictures. It's sort of, and it does some minor edits to them. Like you can go through and change things like your exposure, whether it's too bright or too dark. You can change the contrast. You can add some detail. But when it comes to very specific like edits, like getting in and removing backgrounds and that type of thing, that's Photoshop's job. So the best way I like to think of it is like Lightroom is your general practitioner. Lightroom is going to be able to do a little bit of everything, but not anything terribly specific, where Photoshop is your surgeon. Like Photoshop is your specialist that you're going to go to work on one specific thing at a time. Yeah. So they kind of work in tandem. They work hand in hand, and you can use, I use both of them. But to be able to do, I think some of the things that we're going to be getting into today, Photoshop is going to be able to help a lot more than Lightroom will. Yeah. Awesome. Yes. So I'm going to close you down for a minute. So yeah, you just go through and then you have that. And then you end up having, ooh, crazy, something up here or through like a different app or your program files or something like that, where this is kind of like your home base for your Creative Cloud. And you can open up the software through here, or it's like downloaded and put into your dock or your program files if you're on a PC. You can get here and kind of see like your account, how much cloud storage you have, all that good stuff. It's kind of now within this one application in here to be able to see everything. So yeah. Any questions on that? Any questions on downloading and getting access to Photoshop and all that good stuff? Okay, cool. But of course, if you do later, because I do that, where it's like 3 o'clock in the morning and I'm like, I totally forgot to ask that. So just let me know. And I'll give you all my email after as well. So if you have questions as we, like, yeah, don't hesitate. If it's like a month from now and you guys are like, hey, I'm just now opening up Photoshop. What was that one thing? Like, shoot me an email. No problem. Happy to help. Absolutely. So let's see. Ooh, and I see that some of y'all have laptops. I have images on flash drives if y'all want to follow along with those, if you'd like to. I'm more than happy, yeah, to share those. Otherwise, like I said, we're going to be sharing the screenshots of what we're doing. So yeah, if you do want these, go for it. You can see the images that are on there. I do recommend downloading them onto your desktop rather than working off of like a little flash drive. Working off of flash drives is super slow versus just having them on your computer's hard drive or on like an external hard drive is going to be the best way. So I would even recommend buying an external hard drive just to keep all of your photos on. That's the best way to back them up. That's the best way to keep them safe. Western Digital is a great brand. Seagate, Lacey, those are my three top faves. Occasionally at Costco, they have like a 2 gig Seagate for like $50, and it was just like, Lacey, Lacie. Yeah, Amazon Prime will occasionally have the Western Digitals on sale, and I'm just like, add to cart, 5 of them, please, all at once. Yeah, holiday season is when they go on super sale. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. So I think that just kind of like a general consensus of why y'all signed up for the workshop is that maybe you have pictures that you're taking that are going to be in spaces that don't have the most ideal lighting. And you're like, my cake looks gorgeous. My cupcakes look beautiful. Everything is awesome. But the lighting is the worst ever. And it makes whatever your beautiful creation is just look totally flat and gross. And you don't even feel like posting it. And you're just like, I don't even know what to do with this anymore. So we're going to work with some of those images and kind of turn it around a little bit. So be able to actually have some of those images, change it up, removing backgrounds out, making them a little bit brighter, taking up the saturation on them, just making them pop more to feel like it's a little bit more of like a cohesive image. Because yeah, don't always get the best options when you're out and about and you're driving around and dropping things off, but ideally you can bring them into Photoshop and pretty easily start to piece them back together to make them look how you want to look. Before I even get into that, you can see here that I have 2 different kinds of images here. I have JPEG, which I think everyone is pretty familiar with. It's just like an image, regular image kind of thing. Most pictures are taken in JPEG, and that's a pretty good image to be able to have to work from in something like Photoshop. That's fine. But ideally, if you do have like a DSLR camera, it doesn't have to be like as big and ridiculous as this guy. It can even be just like, if you guys are looking for cameras, just, I guess, quick show of hands. Who here has a DSLR, a mirrorless camera? Okay. If you are in the market for one, Canon Rebel is really great. Nikon, the new, I think it's the 3800 that just came out a little while back, is a really great one. Those are entry-level DSLRs. You can get a whole kit for like $500. It won't run up the bank, and it's a great start. And then I recommend getting a 50 millimeter lens with a 50 millimeter with a 1.8 aperture. So 50 and yeah, so it's going to do that super fun thing that I think like Amanda's picture had here, where it blurs out that background and makes it look all, yeah, I know. So that's what that one's going to do. The lens that it usually comes with, it's usually like an 18 to 55, and that's a kit lens. That will not get you that blurry background. So that frustrated the heck out of me. Yeah, 50 millimeter. 1.8. Yeah, that's what's going to do it. Those are on Amazon too. Yeah, and they're like $100. They're really cheap. You can get some used. KEH is local here, and they sell used gear, so you could probably even get one for like $60 or something. It's really, really great. So if you get one of those, and then you get the 50 millimeter that goes with it, Nikon, Canon, Olympus all have their own version of it. It's great. Yeah, so that's what's going to allow you to get that like nice blurry background that you're looking for, where maybe with that kit lens you're like, where is it, why don't I have it? It physically can't get that blurry of a background. So when you do get your DSLR, what you want to probably set it to, especially if you're going to know that you're going to want to work with it in Photoshop, is a raw image format. So each different camera company has their own version of a raw image. Nikon's are .nef, that's their raw file format. Canon's are .cr2. And essentially what this is like a digital negative. It has way more colors in it than a JPEG will. It is much, much, much easier to edit and manipulate a raw photo than it is a JPEG. JPEG were kind of compressed and crunched in, and we only have so far to go when it comes to changing colors and upping saturation and things like that, where sometimes if you ever go in to edit them, it almost feels like if you slide it, one of like the little edit sliders over just a little bit, it instantly is like, woo, super saturated. Where raw image is a lot more wiggle room in there and a lot more that you can kind of work with and play with. So yeah, if you are going to shoot, just look it up in your manual how to switch it over to set in raw. You can even set it to shoot in raw plus JPEG. So even if you're like, maybe I don't know if I want to quite shoot in raw just yet, you can set it so it takes the photograph and saves it as both file types, raw plus JPEG. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so Canons are really weird when it comes to that. Canons, it literally gives you like hieroglyphs to decipher, to say this is a raw image, this is a JPEG, but the raw will say raw, and then the JPEGs have like little slopes and staircase. It's really like Canon who did that. Oh, no, great question. Not when you're taking a picture. You go into the menu. So for both Nikon and Canon, you go into the menu and you go to the camera menu, and it's image quality. Image quality is the one that you want to be able to set it to. So that's the one. Also fun is if you do get that photography. Oh, yeah.
Question. Which camera do you think is easier to work with?
Um,
Somebody that doesn't know.
let's see. The one that's easier is probably going to be the Rebel. However, the Nikon is better in low light. That's the only thing. So if you find yourself shooting in low light conditions quite a bit, the Nikon is probably going to do a bit better than the Canon, although the Canon is a little bit easier to operate. That's just my opinion, but that's kind of like a little bit, yeah, yeah. So just depending on whatever fits best. And I mean, you can even like just walk into a Best Buy and kind of like handle. They've got them there. So if you just want to get your hands on one, you don't necessarily have to buy it from them, but you can walk in and say, just get your hands on it and try to move the buttons and navigate it. You can kind of try and figure it out, because I know some folks are like, oh no, my brain's totally Nikon or my brain's totally Canon. And the only reason I'm with Canon is because my grandpa gave me a Canon camera when I was like 11, and then that was it. And I was like, okay, I guess I'm a Canon person now. Yay. So yeah. If you do get the subscription and you have the Lightroom software, you can get the Lightroom app on your phone or your iPad, and that will actually has a camera application in it, and you can actually shoot raw images on your phone, which is huge. Huge. So you can go to that camera app, like you open the Lightroom app, you click the camera to take a picture, and it'll ask you, like, do you want this to be a JPEG or a DNG, which stands for digital negative, and you can shoot raw images and have that whole color profile on your phone, which is amazing. That's huge. So you're really going to really be able to edit those much more than a regular phone image will. Yeah. Yeah. Lots of options now. It's all very exciting.
So you just saved me a couple $100.
Yes, totally, exactly. That's what I'm out to do. I'm like, you don't even need, if you don't want to use the DSLR, don't. Like for me, I've got the one that I really like that of the phone that has like the two different lenses on there, and I almost always shoot product photography with the zoomed in one, with the one that has like the not the super wide, the wide angle or the super wide angle now that they have with the new phone, but the one that zooms in just a little bit closer. I prefer that one, but of course it's totally up to you as to which one you use, and just kind of working with it in different ways. Yeah. All right, so let me bring in, I'm going to start with some of these images. So again, like beautiful, gorgeous, but the lighting wasn't fantastic and the backgrounds weren't anything to write home about. So we want to be able to work with some of these and just say, okay, how do I really start to bring out a bit more information in my pictures? So here's where I'm actually going to start. I'm going to start with actually a really good picture. This is gorgeous. That worked very well. And if you are looking to achieve something like this, like if you want to be able to do more in-home studio type of things, whether it's with your DSLR, your phone, or something like that, on Amazon they have white light boxes. So, and they're like $50, and they're absolutely fantastic. And you just pop them in there, and then you take your pictures how it is on the box. Yes, you can get them in different sizes. I've seen ones that are about like 12 inches. So if you do like little cupcakes and stuff, you can get them as that big. But then I've seen ones that are about like 2 to 3 feet, and they'll come at that size. They also collapse down, which is really cool. And some of them come with different backgrounds that you can then tape.
There, so.
Oh yeah, then it's like maybe not so much.
I got that initially, and I bought the tripod with the.
Oh, and the
Yes.
whole crazy
Yeah.
fun super
Yeah,
setup.
much better.
And then you gotta put the cake in. It's just like, oh, never mind. Yeah. Amanda's doing the lighting workshop a little bit later today, so I don't know if y'all are joining her for that one. She's gonna go over more of like actually how to set up the lighting and products and all that good stuff. So yeah, that's Amanda's realm. This is my realm. This is my realm. So here's what happens, and here's like one of my favorite things in Photoshop. Let's see. Are you gonna open, or do I have to actually say, oh no, there it goes. Awesome. So here we are in Photoshop, and at first it can kind of look like the schematics to the Death Star, and I understand that. It does look very intimidating, and it's essentially just to know that you don't need to know 90% of what's in this software. Like, I have a degree in it, so I do, technically, but you do not. Majority of people, 90% of people do not need to know 90% of what's in Photoshop. I'm not even kidding. Same thing goes for the DSLRs. You don't need to know 90% of what's in those random custom function menus. Both of these are built, I think it's kind of fun to remember that both these are built by engineers. I don't know if anyone is an engineer, has an engineer in their family. My dad's an engineer. I love him to death. I love him. Don't get me wrong. I love my father dearly. But if you ask him a question, he's going to give you 5 answers to a very simple question. And that's what they've done on both ends. It's going to be this whole very big thing, and they're going to give you 10 options for one thing, and you just want to do one thing. You just want to do one thing. So the one thing that I really enjoy that they finally put in here is just give me the one thing, is we have my favorite thing in Photoshop ever. We have select, subject. This is a game changer. This has made life so much easier, and this entire software is so much more accessible. So if you just go to that, it'll think. I'll do some thinking, and there it is. So what you're seeing there are these little ants that are marching. That is my selection. That is my actual selection inside of my image. Just from what we had to do before was we had to use, like, I don't know if you've used Photoshop from back in the day, you had to get a lasso tool and you had to like draw along and hope that it like stuck to the right places and that kind of thing. Nope, does it for you now. It is, I love it. I love it. I love it. It saved me so much time. So what we can do with the selection or what we can do with the background, we'll get into that kind of depending on different things. Oh gosh, I already broke my first rule. Oh no, Sarah, could duplicate your background layer. My goodness. So this is how you duplicate the background layer. You drag and drop it into this little plus over here, which just happens to be right next to the trash can, which is really great. Thanks, Photoshop. Thought maybe with the new update, you'd scoot that on over to the other side, but no, all right, okay, all right, I'm not gonna tell you how to do your job. All right, then you can go select subject. It's also a button up here at the same time. And with a picture like this, the reason I'm starting with this image first, it is very, very, very easy for Photoshop to select a subject out of a white background. It's going to see that white background and go, all right, just select anything that isn't white. This is the easiest thing for Photoshop to look at. Yeah.
When you drag and drop down, why did you do that?
Oh, yeah, so it's just like I'm clicking on this, and then I click and hold, and then drag it and hold it over that plus button, and then as soon as I release, it just creates it.
So why did you do that, y'all? Like, why do you have to create like
Oh, why? Sorry, yeah, I was like, wait, so the reason is at least if I goof everything up and something goes horribly wrong and everything totally, like, falls off the rails, at least what I can have is a background layer that still has no edits on it whatsoever. So if I totally mess everything up and everything goes totally haywire, I still have at least one layer on there that I can always fall back to. Yeah. Delete the background layer, copy to, yes. All right. Here's the other thing to remember. Whatever layer you are currently selected on is what you're talking about, like what you're actually telling Lightroom to work with. So if I were to click on background, essentially what I'd be doing is selecting the cupcake on the background layer, not my new layer that I've just created. So I could be like, yeah, let's move that around and take it over here and do that, and be like, oh wait, why am I not seeing that? Because it would be the equivalent of having like one picture of a cupcake like here and one picture of a cupcake here, and you're like moving stuff around and you're just like, wait, why am I not seeing? Because there's literally a whole nother image on top of it. Where if I click this little eyeball right here, you can actually see that I did that. It was just hidden underneath the other one. Yeah. So when you do that, cannot target. No, I know. Yeah, and then it's going to go, could not use the move tool because the target layer is hidden. And then I get frustrated and I press the button a lot. And my boyfriend tells me, he's like, stop it, just read it. And I'm like, no. And then I do. And what it's trying to tell me is I'm currently selected on a layer that I can't see. And that's why. So anytime it's giving you those, you're probably just selected on the wrong layer. Always go back to that. Like a good chunk of the mistakes that I make is just because I'm selecting the wrong layer. That's all. So now that I'm actually on my right layer, I can move it around. Oops. See, now it's going all kinds of crazy. And it's being used as like a selection and starting to move things around. So why don't we start from here? We've done our select. I'm going to actually click on the right copy background layer now, which will be fun. What I can even do from here, if I just wanted to like get rid of the background, if I just wanted to get rid of the background from here, I can go to select, inverse, which is basically saying, hey, take my selection, but invert it. Like put it on the outside. Instead of what I've got, put it everywhere else from where I'm actually currently selected. So I can go inverse, and then I can go edit, cut. And of course we still have our background copy layer there, but now I just have my little cupcake. Yeah. I know. Isn't that nuts? It's made life so easy. It's great. So this is kind of like that process step to be able to like replace a background if you did want to just, or if you just wanted to like use this and put it on something cute. Like if I wanted to maybe, let's say if I want to kind of rotate it a little bit, I can go to image and then transform. This is where all of our, like if you want to make it bigger, if you want to mush with it or anything like that, this is where it all exists, is image or edit, transform. And I can go rotate and I can go like that. Hit enter. I can make a new layer altogether, and that's going to be this little plus button down here. You can do that there, and of course they're going to give you a billion ways to do it. I can go layer and say new layer. Yeah. And this is going to be my color. And here's where it trips me up, where it's like, here's a color, but sometimes, yeah, it's not actually putting a color there. It's just saying, I colored it for you. It's color-coded. And I'm like, cool, thanks. So instead, if I want to fill this with a color, if I want to say, like, put yellow on the background there or something, what I can do is head over here, and it's going to look like a gradient, but what I actually want is my paint bucket tool. Why they hide it And they started doing that a couple years ago instead of just having like the paint bucket tool just hang out right there as it is. I don't know. They always show the gradient tool first, so it's almost like you have to dig for it. You go to the paint bucket tool, and how do I know what color I'm using? These are the colors that we currently have available right here. Boom, 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 black and white. So if I were to drop it down right here, oops, it would be black, and that's pretty gross. We don't want that. We want something fun. So I'm going to go yellow, and I'm able to go up and down this scale here. So that's kind of what I'm doing. I'm just going up and down to see the different colors and the different hues. And then I've got my dot right here, and I'm like, why is it still black? Oh, because I need to move my dot. And I can move it all the way up top to get like a super bright yellow. And I can go okay. And I can drop it in. And it's like, oh, where'd it go? Oh, it's because my background copy is below my color. So right now we're seeing color, cupcake. That's why we're seeing those. So instead what I want to do, I want to click and drag, put it underneath, and boom, there we go. And then you can add text and that kind of stuff so you can create like a little Instagram post for it.
A question.
Yeah.
What did you mean by layer?
Oh, these guys down here, these are my layers. This represents each different kind of thing that I currently have. So one layer just has the cupcake, one layer has the yellow, and then I have my background layer, which I currently have hidden. That little eyeball's gone there. So I just can't see that. And I'm able to work with it. It's there. It's hanging out. I can always refer back to it, but I'm not going to see it visually in my piece right now that I'm working with.
And the background layer that's hidden is the white?
That's going to be this guy right there. Yeah.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, no little eyeball. Yeah, you all let me know if I need to zoom in, like super zoom in or something. But yeah, so if you just want to create like a little post, grab something out and put it in there, that's how you do it. Do you have a question? Yeah.
Yeah, one of the biggest problems that I have is trying to photograph like a white flower on a white background.
Oh, yeah.
So my question, because I haven't used the select tool
Mm.
before, what I've been doing is the quick select and doing it that way.
Yep.
So does that select tool, does it have the ability to do it better than that other tool?
That's a great question.
Your white cupcake liner did great
Yeah.
on that white background, but
Yeah, so it's like, but then what? So what if
Yeah.
you've got like white flour on a white cake,
maybe
and then
that's a
the background's
wavy-
white?
has a
Yeah.
wavy edge and all that. Would that select tool be as sharp as that?
So actually, let's find out. We're going on this journey together, guys. It's going to be fun. So let's get one that maybe has a little bit of like a trickier background, like this one. So we've got the white on white, and we're not sure if it's going to be able to actually line it up perfectly. So let's bring this guy in. And to open stuff, you can either go to File, Open, or you can just drag it and kind of hover over Photoshop, and it'll pop it open for you. Or at least it should. Maybe not. Do they update that too? That would be a bummer. I like that. Oh, okay, you have to hover it over the icon. This would just being cranky. All right, so background copy, going to duplicate that layer, and we're going to go select subject, and we're going to find out the moment of truth. Oh my goodness. No, it did not. It literally ignored everything and was like, that's totally the subject. But let's try this. So we've got our select subject, but now we're going to try select and mask. And it's going to open up some more options here for us to be able to like actually try and use, where like our edge detection. These are sliders to the point where I'm like, you don't have to know exactly what they do. I just kind of like click it and I'm like, what does that do? Like, I'm a professional and I click sliders and go, what does that do? Like, don't hesitate to do that as a beginner at all. So, let's see. A little bit more in the contrast. Let's see. Let's see what it does. Nope, not going to do it there.
Now, those are raw as well.
This is a JPEG.
And that's my other question, because see, I have done raw before, and then I got out of, because I don't know what I'm doing.
Sure. Oh, yeah.
And so somebody said, oh, do raw. So I'm like, raw, and I see this humongous file, and then I'm like, oh gosh. And so then I just went back to JPEG. I said, this is out of my league. I don't know what I'm doing anyway. So so then I was just thinking right that second that, you know, maybe the tool works better on a raw.
Yeah, it definitely will.
So
It
maybe
absolutely
if I
will.
did that, because what I've been doing, and again, I mean, I've stumbled through this stuff, just the same thing. It's like, okay,
Sure.
how do I do this, you know? I've been going back to the picture after I couldn't get it to select right.
Okay.
And like if I had a wavy, whatever, and as much as I would zoom in and try to use the quick select and to get more, it would still be like it wouldn't be sharp enough.
Yeah.
So then I was using the pen tool to do a vector masking.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Which is a time-consuming pain in the rear end.
Yeah.
And I thought there's got to be a better way.
There is. There is. And I will show you. It's still a little bit tedious. Ideally, that image select works, but as we saw, it might not in that exact scenario where it's like white on white on white, and it's just not going to necessarily understand that this is the subject that you want. So there's a couple different ways to do this, but the first thing that I did want to test out, as you mentioned, would it work better on a raw image? So here I've got a raw image, and I brought it in, and this thing is going to pop up that says, welcome to Camera Raw, and you're like, cool, and you're like, get started. And then it's going to give you this, and this is kind of like the gateway into Photoshop if you do bring up a raw image. It won't just automatically open up in Photoshop. It has to go through this weird kind of like application to be able to get it into Photoshop. I don't know. It's very weird. It's very bizarre, but all you do, don't worry, is just go open image. That's it. Don't worry. Just open image. It'll throw it into Photoshop, and then we can actually start to work with it how we want. So now let's try this. Select subject. Subjects. Interesting. And we're also good to see like what it computes. So yeah, there we go. Much easier. It's still not picking up everything, but it's picking up more. It's picking up more of that information. That's going to be a little bit easier for it to read, and we can zoom in like crazy to it, compared with this image where I start to zoom in and it starts to get really pixelated. Mm-hmm. So the bigger the image is, the better, for sure. That's going to be rule number one. If you have a larger image, much, much, much better. So like if you're trying to download the picture and emailing it to yourself or sending it to yourself, make sure it's on like original size or maximum size. If you get those different options, send yourself the original size. That's going to already be a big help. So let's try and figure out, so what do we do if we do want to be able to like take this cake and put it somewhere? We already have a little bit of a tricky part because we've got like a cup there, and it thinks the cup is part of the selection, which it's not. We're going to go, first thing that we're going to do to get rid of anything else that it thought that was there, we can go to select and deselect. So that's going to remove anything out there. It's just like a regular deselect, and it's going to take out any of those little marching ants. We don't even need or want any of those. So the other thing that we can do, we've got our selection tool. Over here, we've got a couple different things that we can use from that. And so we've got object selection tool, the quick selection tool, and then the magic wand tool. Each of these work slightly different from each other. This is brand new. This object selection tool is brand spanking new for Photoshop, which is pretty cool. So what I'm going to actually try, I'm going to try it out. Let's see what happens. It kind of worked before. Oops, no, I know. I just accidentally clicked Photoshop. Chill out. Oh, it's going to want me to like... that's right. It's like, put it in here, and then we'll try and find it. But I totally didn't do that correctly. And it's really going to think about it. It's really going to think very, very long and hard about it. I know you can do it. I just have to give it some encouragement. My computer's getting old. See? And it's doing the same thing, where it's just like, okay, gold. That's cool. That's great. And it's like, no. So instead, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go old school with it. We are going to head up to our lasso tool. And we're going to go to the polygonal lasso tool. I know that sounds really bizarre, but we're going to do the polygonal lasso tool. What is the polygonal lasso tool? It allows me to create selections in lines. So I click once, I click again, I click again, I click again, I click again. And then it creates that selection there. So you can do that. So if you've got a cake that is like relatively like kind of straight lines, this is a good place to start for sure. So I'm going to deselect that out, and I'm going to start here, and I'm going to drag it up, click. So each time I'm clicking, I'm creating an anchor point. That's what I'm doing. So each time I'm clicking, I'm able to like set an anchor and then go from there. It's almost like putting yarn up and doing like the connect the dots in detective movies on a screen kind of thing. So I can just be like, okay, then there to there, and then to there, and to there to there. So I'm kind of just creating like a general outline for right now, nothing like too crazy specific, because there's going to be something that we're going to do in a little bit where we do get that a bit more crazy specific in a way. Whoops. And we're going to go crazy. I'm going to even see if I can like create and extend the cake out, but I don't know if I have enough information to do that. But so here we go. And then if you're like, where's my endpoint? Double click and it'll snap back to it. So if you're ever like searching and you're like, where did it go? I just want to go. Because that would happen to me when I first started, and I end up with lines like all the way out here on the side of the screen. I'm just like, I don't know what I'm doing anymore. And it just like looks like a spider web of like marching ants. You just double click and it snaps it back, and then you just go deselect. That easy. And then just start over. All right. So we've got kind of this like general selection here. Nothing too crazy. We've got this general selection. Now what we want to do is this thing called masking, where we're able to get in and create an even more specific selection. So rather than this general thing, I can actually go and start to paint in my selection. So rather than trying to worry about the selection tool being specific, I can get a general consensus as if it's like you're cutting it with scissors, and then I can go in with an X-Acto blade and start to like chip away at it. So here's how we do that. We're going to go, for whatever reason, my screen is weird and it doesn't show up. So I have to hit this little button over here to make this double, like to put it in 2 rows. And we have this button right here. It looks like a circle takes a square. Boom. And here's what it looks like. I did not make my picture red. That's the first clarification. I did not make my picture red. When we're in mask mode, what we're telling it is, and what we're representing, anything that is red is deselected. Anything that is see-through is selected. So that was that initial see-through selection that I got. That was that initial selection that I was able to attain. But what if I wanted to go in and start to make it much more specific and start to paint in that selection? We literally do that with our brush tool. So we can grab our brush tool, and right now it looks like I'm painting, but it would be me painting a deselection on here. So if I were to turn the mask off, you could see and my squiggly lines became a selection, which is all kinds of crazy. So I'm going to undo that. Undo is Command Z, or if you're on a PC, it's Control Z. So if you just need to back up, just Command or Control Z, and then you can just go and back up from there. So we've got our brush, and if I wanted to start to paint in, whoa, Sarah, what are you doing? If I want to start to paint in a selection, I can start here. And I can say, all right, and bring that in. Notice how the edge of my brush is pretty like soft. If I wanted that to be, yeah, exactly. It's more of that airbrush kind of look to it.
Yeah.
If I wanted to make that harder, I go up here to the top left, drop that down, and here's my hardness. Here's that edge, and you can actually almost see a little preview there. If I wanted it to be like, oh no, my preview's up here. If I wanted that edge to be like super duper hard, I could bring it all the way up to 100. And now I could literally be like cookie cutter cutout lines. For this one, I'm going to hang out around like, yeah, 65 is fine. So if I want to change the size of my brush, rather than consistently having to go back up here and do this and go back up there and do that, there's a couple of quick keys that everyone should know about. The bracket keys on the top right corner of your keyboard are going to make your brush bigger and smaller, so you don't have to go back up and change it. Holding down your Option key and then sliding as if you're scrolling through a browser, that's going to zoom into your image. So rather than having to switch back to our little magnifying glass friend over here and then switch in and out, I can stay in my brush tool and then just zoom in and out with my Alt Option key. Yeah. So now I can start to paint in my selection. And I'm not going to do this like terribly specifically this time. I don't want y'all to think it's like Sarah's really bad at masking. It's like I'm working on a trackpad and we've got a limited amount of time. So just going through, especially for stuff like this, I found even the select subject has a really hard time figuring out unless it's on that white background. Like if it's ornate little details, it's going to be like, I don't know what that is. I have no idea. And it's just going to cut it out completely, or it's going to grab like a larger chunk than you wanted from it. And so we can kind of start to piece it through and grab, oops. So yeah, I goofed. I took too much there. I could go back and switch to my white, but I could also hit my X key. And now I can start to add more into my selection if I wanted to. And that's just the X key. So what I've got right now, what it's doing is I have my white selected, and that's going to allow me to add to my selection versus taking it away. White is adding selection, black is removing the selection. So we're kind of just going along, like I said, very crude layout of what I'm trying to do here. But at least to get the point across of what will happen is my main goal. So we got that. Okay. Easy enough. Yeah, cool. Oops.
Good question. If
Yeah.
you want to get right to those like fine details on the leaf, do you just zoom it out? Do you make the brush smaller?
Yeah, so that brush is going to get itty bitty tiny, and you could just paint in little bits. Absolutely. Yeah, and that can, we'll be here for another hour if you guys want to hang out and watch me paint in needles.
I have a question.
Yeah.
For you on that. What is the benefit of having the soft rather than the hard edge?
Oh yeah, so if you needed to be able to make it not look as like cookie cutter cutout, where it looks almost too Photoshop sometimes, sometimes it appears to be like you literally cut and paste this out. That blending helps to make it a little bit more subtle. I feel like it just helps to like make it a little bit more subtle. Hey, how's it going? Are you good? Oh, okay. So now we got our fit screen. And we can click on that mask again to turn it off to go back to our selection, and there it is. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say image, or I'm going to say edit, copy, edit, paste, and like it does, it created a brand new layer with just the cake on it. Yes, much better, much, much, much better. Fantastic. And again, we can create that new layer, head over to my bucket, put it on like a yellow background, or we can just do a white background. Let's just do like a clean white background. And I'm going to pull that below, and there it is. So it still looks a little bit drab. We still want to be able to affect and change how that's looking and how it actually looks on our on screen. So if we want to like change the colors or anything like that, what we're going to end up doing is, let me double check to make sure that, yeah, okay. There's a couple different ways to do this. The easy and straightforward way is going to be image, adjustments, and then we've got the different ways to change the appearance of our image under our adjustments. So that's going to be the first one. And do we have this for 2 hours? Is this just making sure? Okay, all right. I've seen different, and I just want to make sure. Okay, because I didn't want to be like, okay, bye. Yeah, okay, see you later. All right, good. So the first thing that we can do, there is brightness and contrast here, but I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of brightness and contrast. It only allows you to do a very small amount of things with your picture. I'm a much bigger fan of levels, and here's why. I can adjust my levels individually of each other. So rather than saying everything gets brighter or everything gets darker or everything gets contrast or nothing gets contrast or kind of anywhere in between, I have the ability to sort of play with and manipulate and change just the highlights of my image, just the lowlights of my image. So I'm actually creating more or less contrast as I go along. So I'm able to change it in just the preview, just brighten it up a little bit. That's in these general kind of different input levels here. The output levels, I could actually say like make the whole thing brighter, but then it just looks see-through and we don't necessarily want that. I very rarely touch these output levels. I can say okay. Oh, you know, before we get into that, I'm going to create a new one, but just save that for later. All right. Then we're going to have, we have image adjustments. Then we can do things like color balance and just start to be like, you know what, this was a little bit too yellow. Let me add some blue to it. Make that purple pop a bit more. That's usually majority of the time what's gone wrong is the camera's decided, hey, throw more a different kind of color cast onto it than I initially wanted. Maybe even the wall when you took the picture was like kind of putting on some blue or green or whatever like that. So we kind of get to nullify that through our color balance. So just going from like there to there, taking that yellow out of it, that already makes a pretty big difference. And of course, like if you want to add some blue, a little bit more pink to it, but I think that that looks just fine. Yeah, hit OK. And again, image adjustments. Oh yeah,
Okay. Before you, I might just be me.
No,
I
go
don't
for
know
it.
what any of those like levels, curves, exposure, vibrance.
Oh yeah.
Where do you go find this information out?
Yeah, so let's see, do they have it now where it's like you kind of hover over it? Ideally what you're doing is like kind of how I learned, I would just click on it and start to move it around and be like, do I like it? And yeah, I'm playing with it and just being like, the go-tos that I have are levels and color balance. Those are the two you probably always want to do. That's going to correct your exposure if it's too bright or too dark. And then it's going to correct your color if you happen to have, like we just saw, like that yellow cast and take that out. Those are the two. The ones on top of it, I would recommend. Vibrance is pretty fantastic. Where if you up that, it just makes the colors pop a bit more. Going from like there to there. Maybe making that purple look a bit more like it was in real life kind of thing. Okay.
Is there a preferred order to trying them out?
Not necessarily, no. Color balance is one of the ones I would do first, though, because then that's going to affect how every other color that you see from there on out. So that's one I would do first. If there's one that you're going to do first, it'd be that one. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Let's see. Yeah, there's nothing else that's like too crazy in here that you necessarily have to think about too much. Exposure's okay. Like if you just want to change the overall brightness and darkness, but still, like, I'm not a fan that gets a little bit crazy. I would much rather working in levels. That's gonna work out a lot better. That's my go-to, my recommendation for sure. I guess the other one would be shadows and highlights, where if you felt like you just were like, that's too many shadows, I don't like that, can we kind of bring that up a little bit more? You can do that. And you have a bit more brightness in it versus like it fading away into the background. And go okay. And so then from there, I don't necessarily want that like weird bottom of the cake. I can just kind of get my move tool from here and maybe just drag it down a little bit. So it's just like at the bottom of my frame. The move tool, yeah. That's going to just be like the regular arrows. For whatever reason, the quick key is V. I don't know why. It's just, yeah. Move tool. And you can move that down so it's just like there. And then I can go to my crop tool, which is going to be this one up here. And I can kind of scoot it in a little bit more. So now I've got a pretty decent, much better look. Of course, I could go in and make things a bit more specific. But overall, by comparison to what we had before, I think that works out much nicer. Whoops. Yeah.
So now you just moved it and you cropped it, right? Instead of that, can we just, modify what we had and just add it back?
Yeah, that is usually pretty tricky. So let me back this guy up. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where it's like, if the information isn't already there, it's pretty difficult for Photoshop to just be like, yeah, that goes there. Yeah, it's like, I've had friends that do that, but they're like super crazy professionals in Photoshop, and they know everything.
Can we not use the same color and just...
Yeah, it's like if you try and take it, because there's like still things like texture. So, I mean, like we could try and then we'd have to like, not only that, but then we'd have to shape it out as well at the bottom.
Yeah.
So really what it would do is like, oh, come on, I know. Like even if we wanted to try it out, we could be like here and copy and paste.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd like move it, but then you can see that then
You
the
have to
shadows
play with
don't
the
match
color,
up.
yeah, with
and you'd have to go through and really piece it together. So that's like beyond. So the one thing that you can do is like helping yourself in the future, take a picture that has nothing in front of it. Nothing in front of it. The more light you can get, the better light that you can get, and nothing in front of it, those are going to be your two best friends starting off. Then when you do have to bring it into Photoshop to work with it, then you can do it there. Yeah. They really kicked on the AC in here, didn't they? Yeah, let me... Am I allowed to touch that?
The last one was freezing cold.
Thank you.
I know. I'm like, I'm not ready for it yet. Let me have my Miami weather in the meantime, please.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
No, you
Nope,
went
it's
back.
No, that's what it is now. That's what it was. It said
Yeah.
something you were going to get it. All right, so let's do this. We're about an hour through. Let's take a quick break. If anyone needs to like run to the restroom, stretch, warm up a little bit. And we'll come back in about like 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes. Yeah.
Where are y'all from?
DC.
Oh, it's already cold then.
Yeah, it was supposed to snow today.
Where you from? I was in No.
was a lot darker up on that screen there. Yeah,
Question,
yeah.
you said the Nikon, what was the number that went along with that?
Yeah, let me double check while we're here.
Because I was looking at it.
Yeah, the 3500. That's gonna be it. Let me see if I can fix the color, because from here it's weird. It's like I'm seeing it brighter because it's at an angle, but just walking through that way. Ooh, ooh. Let's try that. Yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay. Cool.
But on that brush tool,
Yeah.
so that polygon, or was that the one that you did where you marked it off?
Oh, yeah, the polygonal lasso tool.
So
Yeah.
what do the other ones do? See, okay, I've never used that polygon one.
Yeah.
The lasso is just your basically go
Regular wherever
grab it,
your
and
hand
the
goes.
magnetic will just it'll gravitate towards what it thinks is a chunk.
It'll
right?
try.
Yeah.
I've always had a lot of frustration with the magnetic lasso tool. So yeah, I'm usually starting in like the quick selection tool, the wand tool, or ideally that select subject to be able to get something out of it. Because even with like the quick select, let me try that real
Well,
quick.
so what's the difference? There's the quick one and then there's the selection tool.
Yeah.
So, pretty much.
Oops. And then it instantly was just like, boom, get out of here.
Yeah, it kind of grabbed that thing.
Okay, so why is it doing that?
I went through
Weird.
those little Learn Photoshop tutorials that are up there,
Yeah.
and it was really interesting on that one that says Fix a Photo that's right there.
Yeah.
There was one of those that had this thing where if you chose some tool and you could add flowers. You know what I'm
Oh,
talking about?
that might have even been like
I've forgotten. It's maybe
clone
further
stamp
down.
tool.
The cloning tool.
Yeah,
That's it.
yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and that, I had no idea that thing even existed.
Oh, it's great. I love it. It's fantastic. Let me see if I can kind of like, because what is this referencing? You said the brushing on it. I don't know how to do that.
Would that cloning thing work on that cake to get rid of that coffee cup?
No, not even really. It would be a lot of cloning, and
Yeah.
it goes too far and takes up too much room for it to really get a good understanding. Why does it keep referencing that? That's so bizarre. I'm just going to
That's why
delete.
it's just so hard with whites.
Yeah, it is really
And then I
difficult.
thought, okay, I'll go ahead and put a black background, and that'll be easy for it. And then you've got a little bitty black outline around your white subject, and then you're back to
And I was like,
trying to get rid of that. So then I figured out, okay, just do the white on white, and then just clean up the edges.
Yeah. And then it can kind of get a little bit more in there. Those are always the hardest. Like if Photoshop can't really distinguish between one thing or the other, it has a really tricky time.
But it's amazing what it does to
I
them.
know. When it actually does work, it's like, oh, thank you. Dang it. I want to get this guy. Deselect. Yeah. It is Being really, really picky. Okay. So, yeah, it's like, but when they do work, it is pretty nice. So a couple of these other selection tools, if they do work for you, awesome. Just want to let you know that they exist. We've got our quick selection tool. We tried the object selection tool. It didn't really work out that well. The quick selection tool is going to allow you to essentially like paint in a selection. And it's going to try and grab what it thinks is correct. So I'm literally just like dragging as I go. But you can see that once it starts to get kind of close to something, it's like, ooh, got that too. So, and it's like, cool, thanks. So now it's just thinking, oh, you wanted this big rectangle. Awesome. And it's like, no, I want to take some more of that stuff out of there. So what I can actually do is I can go up to my brush tools, and there's different ways of selection. Usually any selection tool has these different methods to them to be able to say what you want to do with your selection. So you can say a new selection entirely, so I could start over if I wanted to. I could add to my selection, and that's what I was on before. So even though if I release the click and start to go again, I could still keep dragging and adding to that selection. But here's what I'm going to try this time around is that subtract the selection. So it's like, get out of here. Oops. Okay, so here's the other thing. If it starts to impede too much, I'm going to make my brush smaller and see if I can get a little bit more discerning. Yeah, it's still going to want to grab onto that, but at least it's doing something a little bit better. No! Come back. Come back to me. There it goes. Thank you. Back to my reduce selection and then cut that out. Click. I'm literally just clicking now. I'm not even clicking and dragging. I'm just like clicking once and just being like, are you going to figure it out for me, please? And this might even be a better solution. Whoops. For something as complicated as our guys here, I'm going to go super itty bitty tiny brush and click and drag and see. Ah, yes. Yeah, sorry. I know. It's like anytime that I go like this, I should definitely be doing that for you guys too. So really just making it a little bit easier. So yeah, that quick selection tool might be a little bit better for things that are a bit more intricate. And don't forget, you can also combine these selection tools. So even though maybe I started with my other selection tool, like the Polygono selection tool, I may have started with this guy, this one. But I can go, and here's what they actually represent now. So it's not going to give you the plus and minus. It's going to say add to selection, subtract from selection. And then I've never used intersect with selection as long as I've lived. I have no idea why that would be needed, but it's there. So, and also if you hover over stuff for long enough, it'll just tell you what it is. It'll tell you what it's about to do. So that quick selection tool is pretty fantastic when it comes to just grabbing those little details. If you don't want to take the time to mask and paint them out yourself, that's going to make a huge difference there for sure. Cool. Let me copy, paste, and we've got our dude here. Sweet. I'm going to bring him up to the top. Awesome.
Can we use this particular that particular part onto a pattern? I mean, so let's say you have another background. You just have a background, but you don't have it. Can you put this part onto that background?
Oh yeah, if you just say like you took a picture of just like let's do this. This would actually be kind of cool. The place where I get my free stock images from is this place called Pexels, pexels.com. And let's say, what do we want to do? Let's do like an ivy wall. That would be cute. These are also moody. I want like a bright. Want a grass wall? Is that like plant wall? Am I just like being too specific here? Plant wall. The which one?
The boxwood hedge. It's called.
Oh, that's it. Nope. Oh, there we go.
Uh-huh.
This is more of what I want, but these are like sponsored. Yeah, there it is. Okay. Hedge. Hedge is what we were looking for, people. Plant wall would be clear enough. And then I just do free download.
Oh, these are free down.
These are free downloads. Yeah. So don't have to pay for them, which is pretty fantastic. People just donate their images, which is great. So now I've got that image, and I'm going to drag and drop it over in my Photoshop. And so I've got this. And what I can do, there's a couple different ways to be like, I'm going to bring this in and start using this from this image. So I can, first and foremost, my easiest way to do this is going to be to just drag and drop it, but I'm pulling this actually out of the tab. So it's like its own window, and I can see the two next to each other. That's something I think a lot of people forget to do, but makes it so much easier where now I can just click and drag. Oh, look how tiny it is by comparison. That's hilarious. This is why we use high-res images. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take my background, and I'm going to transform. I'm going to make it tiny. So, oh my God, that's funny. Post that to Instagram. Command T is to get just a transform box to make things bigger and smaller, or Control T for PC users. So if I go like that, there it is. That's our picture, everyone. Welcome. Yeah. I'm gonna crop into it so we could actually see what we're doing here. It's so tiny. There we go. All right. That's kind of silly, but yeah, it's like you get the idea. And so what you've done essentially is you've just taken your cake and your layer and put it in here. So the things that aren't necessarily like matching up correctly at this point is really like the things that will make things look photoshopped is light and color. Those are the two things that someone can look at and identify and go, oh, that's totally photoshopped. That's come on, like no way. So how do we fix that? How do we actually start to like layer things on top to make them look as if they match and fit with each other? We can kind of identify to say this is a lot more blue and this is a lot more yellow. That's how I usually go. Is it warmer or is it cooler? Is it warmer or is it cooler? This is a lot warmer. This is a lot cooler. And these two are not matching. So we want to make this one warmer. There's ways to do that. We could do things like image adjustments. We could go into, which one is it? We could try our color balance again and like shift it over towards the yellow. And that kind of tends to do and work with it a little bit more. But it's still like that's the easy way. But I don't like doing things the easy way. So you could do that. That's one way. The more specific and kind of, I guess, like Photoshop-y way is to do these things called our adjustment layers. I'm going to get these to show up by going up here, and we're going to change our view. Right now we're just in Essentials. We go to our photography view, and we get this tab here that says Adjustments.
Was that a little menu item or something up there?
Yeah, just this guy up here in the top right corner for sure. And then you get all these little adjustment guys here, and apparently Photoshop is very angry with me at that. Cool. No. So what we want to do is we want to like say add an adjustment. And what these do comparatively, adjustments up here versus adjustments here, this is creating it and putting that adjustment onto the actual layer itself. So it's taking whatever we're doing and it's sort of merging and meshing it with this layer. With these ones, however, let's see, gradient map, select color, posterize, and I always forget what these are, so I kind of have to like go along and say vibrance, exposure. Let's do photo filter. That's a good one. Because we have color balance, but I think photo filter will work better. We click on it, and what it does is it creates its own layer. So we can start to work with it as if it's its own thing. Like we can actually play with it on a separate, more like intricate level and even apply it to more specific areas of our picture. So we've got our photo filter, and we could say, yeah, put the color into the warming. but it's going to apply it to the entire image. We just want to apply it to our cake. So what we want to tell it, we're going to go ahead and delete this photo filter. Say yes. And I'm going to command click in this tiny box. This is my little thumbnail here. And as soon as I hold down command, I get my little selection, my little dot, dot, dot. So when I click, command click, it reforms and redoes that selection that I have of my layer, which is huge. Command on Mac, click, or control for PC, click. For the iPad, I am not sure. I will have to do a little bit of research into that. But there absolutely has to be a way. There may even be like a special button for it or something. So I've regained that selection. So now when I click on photo filter over here under my adjustments, it's only going to apply it to my cake. How do I know that? Down here, this is a little representation of our mask. This is kind of that red sort of thing, but now it's represented in black and white, actually how we paint it in, like physically. The white is where it's being applied. The black is where it's not. Yeah, pretty cool. So we've got our, and you can flip back and forth to see the mask between these two buttons here. It's like, here's the filter and here's the mask. So the filter, we've got our warming filter, and we can test out. They've got some that are already kind of like in here. So let's try yellow. Oh, that's close. Maybe that one. Or we can just say, I'm going to pick the color. Forget it. I got this. Okay. And then the density is like how much it's being applied. The other thing that we can do to make it pop a bit more is we can take our layer here, this one, and we can add one of these levels adjustments and make it darker to make the cake pop a bit more. And notice how it's not affecting the cake because once again, the magic of layers, it's only affecting whatever is below it. Anything above it, it's like, again, like kind of like this guy where we've got things stacked on top of each other. This is only going to, if I put like a color filter over it, it's only going to affect everything from here below because everything else on top, the light isn't going through. So we're kind of seeing it as like, here's what's on top, and then if the levels layer is here, it affects whatever is below it. So we can make that. The other thing that I really like about having these adjustment layers like this is then we can make them a little bit more discreet. So we can go to things like image and apply image. And this is getting into kind of some crazy Photoshop, but it does make it a little bit less kind of just like on the face of it. It helps to make it a bit more, I guess it's just a bit more integrated with the texture in your overall image and the shadows that are already there. So rather than just taking like almost a see-through cellophane yellow filter and putting it on top of your picture, it's kind of taking it and melding it with the actual piece of the picture that's there. So that's going to be apply image. And I just go with like the first one that pops up. I don't get too crazy. And like apply image could literally be like anything in all these different color modes. And it's just like, no, blah, blah, blah. Just that. Whatever it gives you first, I'm like, that looks good. Cool. Thank you. And then okay. And then, of course, if we wanted to again, we could go back in and say, actually, let's bring up the levels just like a little bit, make it some brighter. And it's not going to always look like entirely accurate, also because we're missing shadows as well. It looks obviously like these two are not together. So a couple ways that we can change that up. The first way is to add shadows to our background as if it's actually there. So we always go in the direction of where our light is hitting. So our light is hitting from this angle, so the shadow is going to be back here. Yep. So we've got a tool over here. We've got our dodge tool and we've got our burn tool. This goes back to like old school photography. Old school with like dark room type of thing. Dodge tool is going to make things brighter. Burn tool is going to make things darker. And we're essentially going to choose the burn tool and we're going to paint in our shadow. Again, we have our selection like the same way that we did up here with the hardness and all that good stuff. We can even say what we want to affect, if we want to affect just the shadows, the midtones, or the highlights. How much of an effect it's going to be. That's 50%. That's actually a lot, so I'm going to bring that down to like 25. And then, oops.
What was that called again? I'm sorry.
Oh, burn tool. Yeah. And I want to make it bigger and add in a little bit of a shadow behind it. If I feel like I'm not getting there enough, I can bring up that exposure. Yep. And that makes it already feel a bit more like it's actually there in the space. It's shadows. Our eyes and human brains are always looking for shadows. That was the burn tool. Yep, that'll do it. Does that not make all the craziest difference in the world? Is that not nuts?
And it really makes a break if you're trying to post it.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, it's like without it, you're just SOL. You're just like, okay, yeah, you totally Photoshopped that. But this, you're like, maybe.
Now, how is that going to be like? So once you've done all of this, let's say you wanted to print this out as like a print.
Oh yeah.
Is that still gonna look good?
With something this tiny, probably not. You might be able to print it out like that big. This would be fine as an Instagram post because it's only going to go on a screen like that big. But if you wanted to print it, not too big. Maybe if you're putting it on a postcard, it'd be fine to have it as like a little side print or something. But the bigger, the better. Absolutely. And I'll get into like saving and all that and making sure we're saving things at the highest resolution possible for sure. The other option as well is to blur out the background to make it feel like there's a little bit of what's called depth of field. So you have something in the foreground that's like kind of with Amanda's picture before. You have something in the foreground that's clear, and then the background is sort of blurred. So we'll take our background layer, and ooh, do we have an adjustment? No, I don't think we do. That's okay. We're gonna go up here. We're gonna filter, blur, and Gaussian blur. I remember it's Gaussian because that kind of sounds like Ryan Gosling, and I like him. He's my favorite. All right, so what we're doing is we're just creating a blur in that background. And I can drag this over a bit. And we're bringing up that radius until it looks like maybe it's actually, like if we go too far, it's going to be like, ugh, no.
Okay.
But just a little bit kind of makes it feel like it's got some distance to it. So we were here before, which is still pretty good. And then if you wanted to add some distance, you could do that as well. I kind of like it. I think it looks fine with that. But if you felt like maybe the textures were competing, you could add it as like a little bit of a blur in that background instead. Yeah, let's go with that. And that's going to be the blur filter.
Where do you go to do shadows?
This guy over here.
Okay.
It's a dodge tool. Burn and dodge. The dodge tool, we can look at that as well. That's going to make things brighter, just the opposite of the burn tool. So if I wanted to brighten up this side of my picture, I can do that. I'm not going to, I'm like, why is it not working? Because I'm not on the right layer, Sarah. Duh. See, even I do it all the time. There we go. Much better. Much, much, much better. That alone just went from like there, redo, to there. Yeah. So some really pretty simple stuff with just like the dodge and burning to be able to even out exposures and things like that.
Where is the blur filter? The blur filter.
Oh, up here it's going to be filter,
Oh,
blur, Gaussian blur. Yeah. Cool. Pretty good. Any questions on any of that? I know that's a lot. It's a lot. And it doesn't
And you
have
have
to
to
be.
play with that.
Yes,
So
yes.
you will learn.
That's
on
going to
the
be the
process.
biggest thing. And like I said before, I'm doing the recording and all of that, so you guys are going to have it, and you can walk through it step by step and see exactly what I clicked and all of that to get that to come out. So don't worry about that there. But a lot of it is playing with it and just making sure that things, and you'll get a better eye of it as you go along. I think that's the thing that took me the longest time to like kind of get used to, was to say, hey, how do I know if this looks right or not. And the biggest thing I can tell you and why I like to take a break halfway through these is literally just even for me to relax my eyes, because I'll be sitting there forever and then I'll go through a run of editing for about like 20 or no 20 oh my god 20 minutes, I wish, a good like 2 hours, and then I'll come back and I'll be like, what was I doing? Like, what was that? That looks awful. What was I thinking? Usually if I wake up the next morning and look at it, I'll be like, oh God, why did I do that? What was I doing? So little things like that, you just step and kind of refresh your eyes, look at real world things, and then come back to looking at the screen. So definitely recommend that for sure. When it comes to saving, we've got a couple different options. We've got File, Save As. If you want to come back to it at some point, if you're not done quite editing it and you want to be able to like refer back to it, you go Save As. Oh, this is cool. Now they're giving you the option. So you could say Save to Cloud Documents. You could throw it up there. So if you did want to go and work with it on your iPad or something, you could save it to your Cloud Documents. Or you could save it on your computer, which is my usual go-to. And the format is going to be a Photoshop file. So that's what you're going to want to have it as. It's going to say .psd. And that is going to save it so where it's got those layers and everything, you can come back to it and use it later. Yep. If you wanted to, if you wanted to save it to print, that's just going to be a JPEG. But you're not like resizing it or anything like that. It's literally just straight out of the gate JPEG, and it'll save it as a high-res JPEG image. If you want to post it online, you could also use that JPEG, but there's a chance that it might pare it down. You could use that JPEG, but there's a chance that it'll make it pixelated because it'll try to like crunch it. If you want to format it yourself for the internet, you go File, Export for web. Yeah. See, once you go Save for web, don't want it as a GIF because it's not moving. It's weird. Do JPEG. And you can go, and then your quality, you can say high, very high, maximum. And then you go save. That's going to help to reduce the size down while keeping the quality. So wherever you post it to, Instagram, Facebook, or whatnot, isn't going to be paring down your image for you and saying, this is what it has to look like now. It's like, no, I got it. Thank you. Yeah. Cool. Pretty good? Sweet. Awesome.
Very good.
So we've got a little bit of time, and I just wanted to show you real quick like what Lightroom is. So because if you get Photoshop, you're going to have this one as well, and I hate for it just to sit there and collect dust. This is a really awesome software. I'm a huge fan of it. I go through Lightroom before I go through Photoshop. This is my go-to instead. This is my first line of defense, and then I bring it into Photoshop if I have to. So when you're importing your pictures through Photoshop or through Lightroom, I always do that. And I call my camera my computer, my computer my camera. You add photos. So if you want to like bring those pictures in that we were working with, let's see, we'll go desktop. Yeah, we've got those. And I can say review for import. And from here, I can check and say which ones I do and don't want to bring in, which ones I do and don't want to import onto my drive. And they're all up in the cloud. I should also mention, like anything that you're getting, it's going up to the cloud. So if you do really start to use Lightroom CC, I would recommend getting that 1 terabyte. Like if you do really start to like this, maybe you think about getting that extra storage to go along with it so you don't run out of room pretty quick. And then I'm going to say, yep, I want all of these. And then up in the tippy top here, it's going to say add to album. If you've used Apple Photos or iPhoto, this is going to work very similarly, where you take your pictures and you add them into your albums. So I can say a new album, and I can say cakes, and select all, and add 6 photos. Boom. Then they're going to show up in a couple of places. My big thing that I love about this, especially being an event photographer, is I have like the different recently import, but more importantly, I have them set by date. I didn't have to do that. The computer did it for me. That's amazing. Like as long as the date is correct in your camera when you go and shoot, it'll just put it in there as to like whatever it was, like whatever date it actually turned out that it was. So I can go in here and say like October.
Do you need anything?
I think we're good. Are you guys good? Yeah. Thanks. So it'll remember like the date that you took it, so you don't have to organize it by date yourself. The software's already doing that for you. Then on top of that, you've got your albums here that you've created. Where's the cakes one? Right there. Boom. And then I've got a bunch of other ones in here. And then I've organized them even further into folders. So these are my albums, and then this is like a folder, and then I can put albums into those folders if they all kind of go together, like for the school, a whole bunch of stuff in there. I can go in and I can edit them with our edit panels over here. Like I said, pretty basic stuff in terms of light. We've got like our exposure. I'm going to bring the highlights down. I'm going to bring the shadows up. I can get into things like color corrections. Again, I can change like the vibrance to make it a bit more brighter, make it a bit warmer. You can really get into a whole bunch of crazy fun stuff in here. I think my favorite one is this one, the linear gradient tool. I can click and drag and create and bring this entire sky back into my picture, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But on top of that, the organizing is pretty fantastic. So if you're looking to organize your pictures, what I'll do is I'll go through a whole bunch of images and I'll set them and give them flags. I can say, I really like this one, I don't like this one. So I can go through and say, yeah, that's a flag, and that's a flag. That cute donkey was adorable. That's a flag. And then once I go through them and say, here are the ones that I really liked, I can go up to my filter up here and say, just show me the ones that I flagged. And you can have those as like your actual organizational tools to be able to start to pull them together. If you do take a ton of images, you can start to organize them that way. I could even go over here into my little tags and give them keywords. And I could search by keywords if I did, okay, right now it's searching under August 2017 and the ones that I picked. But say if later, whoops, here's my little books. I went to all photos and I want to be like, oh, geez, where are those pictures of Napa? There, boom. It's so cool. Makes my life so much easier. Not only that, I can take those pictures that I took in Napa and send them really easily to my family. I can go control click, share and invite, and it pops up with a link. And I just send that link to, or email that link to my folks, and then they can see them, and then I can set it to say, let them download them. Yeah. This has eliminated the need for me to be like, here's a Dropbox. And then my mom contacts me back and goes, I don't have a Dropbox account. And I go, Mom, you don't need a Dropbox account. And she goes, well, I want a Dropbox account. And I go, I know you have an account. And then she goes, I can't remember my password. And then I go to this. And then she turns into this whole thing. And so now I'm just like, here's the link. Just click on it. And it pops up in this wonderful, already ready to use, nice, clean thing that she can go through and even send the link to my grandparents and all that good stuff. Yeah. So that's kind of like a little Lightroom crash course there.
Could you show me on my
Yeah.
room the healing tool? I don't know why I was having trouble because it's like they changed something, or maybe it was just me, but it was like it was goofy. It was making a little mark and then another, and then I don't know.
Yeah, so the healing brush tool in here, if I wanted to say like remove that sign out of there, I felt like that was being weird. I'm like scrolling up and down on my keypad to make it bigger and smaller. And I can click on it, and then it'll go somewhere and try to find a place to replace it with, but it is not always accurate. So what I have to do is I have to grab it and find a better piece, and it'll try to merge them together. This is not nearly as accurate as Photoshop, though. Keep that in mind. It's not as good as Photoshop. Usually if I'm doing, like, removing, it didn't do terrible. It didn't do awful. But if I'm removing stuff, I'm probably going to do Photoshop, because it has to be a circle in Lightroom. It has to be a circle, and it has to be like a size, and then it has to say grab this and go here, so it's kind of yeah. Oh yeah, duh. Oh my god, how would we not do that? So if I wanted to say like clean this up a little bit, maybe I didn't want that bead or that drop there or something, I've got two different options. I've got my healing brush tool. The healing brush tool is going to try and take something out and replace it with something that it feels like is better, but it doesn't work all the time. But we're going to try it. We're going to see if I click on it. Here's the other thing that comes up. Option click to define a source point to be prepared during the image. What I have to do is I have to click Alt or Option, Alt Option, say take this and try and replace it. Oh, okay, it was lagging. And do that. and then it's gone. That was a good one. That was a pretty good one.
So it's the healing option.
Mm-hmm. There's the healing. There's also the clone stamp. The clone stamp is going to be like an exact copy paste. So I'm literally saying take exactly what is right here, click, and put it right here, click. But that doesn't necessarily work all the time. That's kind of maybe a little bit more exact. That's going to be more for things like we were talking about, I think, where it's like if you wanted to maybe take like a flower here, oops, click, Alt, and put another one like over here, you could do that. That's going to be more for like the clone stamp is more of like not removing, but adding, where the healing is removing. Yeah, I think that's the best way to put it. Yeah.
What's the difference between those two? There's two healing looking icons there.
Oh, there's this one where it's more of like
Did you draw with that one? Right? Okay,
this is a drawing. This is like a dot.
Bone. Okay.
Yeah. Cool. Any other questions? Any other random things that you guys? I like randomness. Yeah.
See, so for every edit there, should you create a layer?
I like to. Yeah, I recommend that. So it's like if you're going to do another big chunk of things or another setting or another adjustment, I recommend creating a new layer. It's just like duplicating it and then doing that on top of it, or just creating a new adjustment layer. That way there's a lot more room and wiggle room to work with if something goes wrong. Then you can say, oh, you know what, I forgot to do that, so let me back up to this layer and do it. And then it'll affect the rest of them as you go.
In the order, you should start out with the original on the bottom and then all the edits on top.
Build up from there. Yep, exactly.
Where are these? Oh, so you can actually save it anywhere, right? It can be.
Oh.
Hard drive or.
Yep, external hard drive on the cloud.
Whatever you mentioned as in the extension file will be whatever we put in, right?
Yeah, the PSD file. That's going to allow you to go back, have the edit, save it. I still recommend saving anything that you do in Photoshop as a PSD file because maybe at a later point, I worked really hard on this background. Maybe I really like this background and I want to put a different cake in there. I could just pull up this Photoshop file and bring in another picture of a cake and cut that out and just drop it in rather than starting from scratch. I found that saving those Photoshop files, it saves you time in the future because then you're like, I don't have to work with it that much and I don't have to try and piece things together from scratch.
Is there ever an instance where you start making adjustments in Lightroom and then move that photo over to Photoshop, or do you just start over again?
Oh, no, I do that all the time. Yeah, so if I'm in Lightroom and I'm working with this picture, I can say photo, and then, oh, where'd it go?
I think you can right click on it. I accidentally did it the other day.
Yeah, maybe.
Edit in Photoshop.
Oh, there, am I totally blind?
Get down to.
Oh, there it is, edit in Photoshop, yep. So then you edit in Photoshop, you save it, and then the changes are reflected in Lightroom. So they kind of talk to each other, yeah. Well, cool. Thanks, guys. Yeah.
Did you still want our email?
Yes, absolutely. If you guys want to come up here and write them down, or if you want to write them and give them to me, that's fine. Either way, I'll just have a list, and then I'll send you the screenshots, and yeah.
What's your email?
My email is Sara, Sara, at atlschooloffphoto.com.
Just run on that one.
Perfect.
You said Sarah at what?
atlschooloffphoto.com. Sara, no H.
Where's the school located, Sarah?
Yeah, it's in Druid Hills. So yeah, it's right over like at the end of Lenox Road when Lenox Road runs into Buford Highway. Yep.
I live over there.
Yeah. Oh, perfect.
ETL photo?
ATL School of Photo.